Let's talk about hunger. One out of every 11 people go hungry each day. But why? Learn about top causes of world hunger and what we are doing to solve them. The last 5 years of fighting hunger have been difficult. After years of improvement, the numbers started to reverse course beginning in 2020. Owing to a fatal combination of the COVID-19 pandemic, rising conflicts, and consecutive climate emergencies, especially droughts. These are the three key causes of world hunger, but they are not the whole story. These are the 10 largest contributing factors to our global food security crisis and what we are concerned are doing to address them. Poverty and hunger go hand in hand. Families experiencing poverty usually cannot afford enough food for everyone to eat. If they can eat, it's often not food that provides the full range of vitamins and nutrients that people need every day to thrive. This undernourishment can lead to intergenerational cycle of poverty. Children who don't get enough food have greater difficulties focusing in school, which can hinder their chances of getting a complete education and higher paying jobs than their parents. Parents who skip meals to make their food stretch may also struggle with work, limiting their earning potentials. It is a vicious cycle. We can see the link between poverty and hunger play out at the macro level as well. The Democratic Republic of Congo is one of the world's poorest countries. Last year, nearly 75% of the country's residents lived below the poverty line. Earlier this year, the Integrated Food Security Phase classification estimated that 68% of the country are also living with some degree of food insecurity. Food storage. Empty shelves in supermarkets in Myokali shortly after beginning of the war in Ukraine, for example. Empty shelves, for example, in their countries. Sometimes it is not even an issue of found, but one of supplies. In low-income farming communities, families after experience periods before harvest known as hunger seasons. These are the times of year when food supplies from previous harvests are used up, but the next harvest is still a way off. This leaves families forced to skip one or more meals each day in the period before the next harvest, which could be months away. Also seeing food shortage increase in the last few years in certain countries following both the COVID-19 pandemic or other wars. Border closures, trade routine interruptions have prevented a critical supply from getting where they are needed most. Conflict and hunger from another various cycle, both for countries experiencing active conflict and even for those that are not. For countries in conflict, violence can lead to destruction or farmlands displacement and people sheltering a home for their own safety. Conflicts also lead to high inflation rates that makes food available at the market unaffordable for many civilians. International conflicts also carry a large impact. Pre-war, for example, Ukraine and Russia exported 25% of the world wheat supplies. Malawi, which has enjoyed relative place for the last 3 decades, is one of many countries that has historically relied on this region located more than 5,000 miles away for key staples. Conflict has interrupted those supply chains and also contributed a global inflation rates, leaving millions of people without key lifeline. Natural disasters are also a major cause of hunger, which each event, big or small, setting the most vulnerable people and communities further and further back. As we have seen in recent years, climate shocks have also become more frequent and more destructive as a result of global warming. Extreme climate patterns also tend to have a higher effect on low-income areas of the world. The World Bank estimates that the climate crisis has the power to push more than 100 million people into poverty over the next decade, which turns will have a direct impact on hunger rates. Families living in poverty often rely on just one or two staple foods like corn or wheat for the majority of their meals. As a result, they don't get enough critical macronutrients and vitamins. Even if they feel full, they may still be suffering the effects of hidden hunger. Nutrition is especially key for a child development during the first 1,000 days between being in the womb and their second birthday. If a child suffers chronically malnutrition during this time, they may face with lifetime of health and developmental issues. Likewise, nutrition is also important for maternal health. Mothers need even more vitamins and minerals in order to deliver a healthy newborn. Systematic problems like poor infrastructure or low investment in agriculture often prevent food and water from reaching the population that needs them the most. This is especially true in a fragile context, which is why many of the hungriest countries in the world are also experiencing some form of political instability. If sources are limited, leaders may focus on the most pressing emergencies. Unfortunately, hunger is often a silent crisis in these cases. With decades of crisis in Somalia, for example, the recent Horn of Africa drought carried an even larger impact on millions who faced hunger as a result. The issues wasn't just failed crops or drought-related displacement, but a much larger contextual problem. After two civil wars and 2014 and 16 Ebola's outbreak, Liberia's economy was left weakened by back-to-back crises, nearly a decade after the end of the Ebola epidemic. Half of all Liberians still live below the poverty line. It also often ranks among the hungriest countries on the Global Hunger Index. Inflation as a result of bad economy means that even if food is available and people have jobs, they may not be able to afford even the most basic staples. Last year, for example, the cost of an emergency food basket rose by 66% in Ethiopia. According to the World Food Programme, over 1 billion tons of food produced is never consumed. That's equivalent to us throwing out 1/3 of the global food supply every year. That's more producing this wasted food also uses other natural resources that, when threatened, have a ripple effect in the countries that are already hit hardest by hunger, poverty, and climate change. Producing this waste food requires an amount of water equal to the annual flow of Russia's Volga River and nearly 3 billion tons of greenhouse gases to the atmosphere. The UN notes that if female farmers had the same access to resources as their male counterparts, the number of hungry people in the world could be reduced by up to 150 million. Female farmers are responsible for growing, harvesting, preparing, and selling the majority of food in low-income countries. Women are on the front line of the fight against the hunger. Yet they are frequently underrepresented at the forums where important decisions on policy and resources are made. Hunger can be a cause of a forced migration. Forced migration can also be cause of hunger. Refugees and internally displaced people living in displacement camps or informal communities are often legally or linguistically prevented from getting work to supply their families while away from home. Many refugees are also women and children, which means their options are even more limited. Many refugees live in neighboring countries, countries with limited resources to begin with. Some of the hungriest countries in the world are also among the largest host continents or have high rates of internal displacement. Emergency food assistance helps, but the problem of hunger and migration can only be resolved with a political solution. From Afghanistan to Yemen, concerns health and nutrition programs are designed to address the specific intersectional causes of hunger and malnutrition in each specific context. Our project often combines two or more of the following areas of focus: agriculture and climatic response, maternal and child health, education, livelihoods, and water and sanitation and hygiene.